earlier on Race to the Finish.
Their record would be 36-10 since August 15th. Oh, he struck him out! And they are jumping for joy as the Astros celebrate a return to the playoffs. They are winners of their last 7 games to finish the season in a rush. It's 18 straight at home. They are the wild card champions. Phil Garner's club closing with a record of 48-26 after he took over at the All-Star break.
The previous year, the Houston Astros finished the season 36-10 and clinched the NL wildcard spot on the final day of the season. They rode that momentum all the way to the NLCS, where they lost to their division rival Cardinals in 7 games, a series in which the home team won every game. However, their winning ways did not carry over into the first third of the 2005 season, as they started off 15 games under 500 in late May. This Astros season was marked by the declining health of veteran first baseman Jeff Bagwell, who was officially placed on the disabled list in early May with shoulder pain and would be out for 4 months after shoulder surgery. Just like the year before, though, the season dramatically turned around for the Astros in early June, and were able to break the 500 mark at the All-Star break. They concluded July by going 9-2 against the Nationals, Phillies, and Mets, all of whom they were fighting with for the wild card, and actually took the wild card lead by the end of the month. After a mediocre August, they sat just half a game back of the Phillies for the wild card, entering Labor Day. Speaking of which, the Philadelphia Phillies had not made the playoffs since losing in the 1993 World Series. Over the past decade, the Phillies had several years with a strong start, only to fade in the second half and miss the postseason. In 1995, they were just half a game out of the wild card to begin September, but finished the season 9-18 to finish well outside the playoff spot. In 1998, they were just 3 games back of the wild card in mid-July, but faltered in the last 2 months to again finish well outside the playoffs. In 1999, they were just 4 games back of the wild card, and in the heat of the NL East race, at 13 games over 500 in early August, but finished the season 16-37, again well back of the wild card. Their best chance may have come in 2001, when they held an 8-game division lead in the division in early June. However, the team faltered over the summer, and while they were able to stay just a couple games back of the Braves in September, they couldn't quite overtake them and were eliminated in the final week of the season. They had another great chance in 2003, as they were at or near the top of the wildcard standings all season, until a 6-game losing streak in late September crushed their dreams, which included a sweep at the hands of the wildcard winning Marlins in the final week to eliminate them from playoff contention. The next year they were in contention once again and led the division in early July, but once again faded the rest of the summer and were basically out of a playoff spot by the time September rolled around. Manager Larry Bowa was fired at the end of the season after 2 straight second-half collapses. It didn't look good that Terry Francona, who was their manager in the late 90s, just guided the Red Sox to a World Series title. The Phillies hired former Indians manager Charlie Manuel that offseason in hopes to end their decade-plus long playoff drought. The Phillies got off to a mediocre start in 2005, just 1 game over 500 at the All-Star break, just like the Astros. After that, though, they caught fire, going 18-10 from August 3rd until September 2nd, taking a half-game lead in the wild card entering Labor Day. On the weekend preceding Labor Day, the Phillies lost 2 of 3 to the Nationals, who were now just 2 games back in the wildcard race. Meanwhile, the Astros lost 2 of 3 to the NL leading Cardinals, who were on pace to win 100 games for the second straight year. Starting on Labor Day night, the Phillies welcomed the Astros to town for a 3-game series. The 2 teams had met in Houston in late July, with the Astros sweeping that 3-game series. In fact, the Phillies had not beaten the Astros since 2003, as they went winless against them in 2004. On Monday night in Philly, the Astros took a 4-0 lead off starter Brett Myers before an out was even recorded, with 3 of those coming on this Lance Berkman home run. One of those runs was unearned, by the way. Although the Phillies came back, Down 4-3 in the ninth with 2 down, Jimmy Rollins lined a double down the right field line, but pinch runner Matt Keita, who was on first, was held at third base. That decision not to send him proved costly, as closer Brad Lidge struck out the next man up, Endy Chavez, to end the game. The Astros had now taken a half-game lead in the wildcard standings. On Tuesday night, with the Phillies down 1-0 in the fifth, rookie Ryan Howard hit a solo shot off Roy Oswalt to tie the game at 1. That score held into the 8th when Howard came up again against Oswalt with the bases loaded and 2 down, but he grounded out to end the inning. In the next inning, former Astro Billy Wagner walked Lance Berkman with 1 out, and he was pinch run for by Eric Bruntlett. He promptly stole second. Then, 2 pitches later, he stole third. 3 pitches after that, Jason Lane singled home Bruntlett, giving the Astros the lead. In the bottom of the ninth, with the tying run on second, Lidge struck out J-Roll to end the game, and the Astros stayed on top in the wildcard race. On Wednesday night, the Phillies looked to avoid the sweep and get their first win over the Astros in 2 years. In a back-and-forth affair, tied at 5 with the bases loaded and 2 down in the 8th, pinch hitter Shane Victorino hit a go-ahead single scoring Howard, but David Bell was thrown out at the plate. Nevertheless, the Phillies grabbed the lead. In the top of the ninth, with the Astros down to their final strike, Jose Vizcaíno hit a grounder to third that Bell booted to keep the game alive. Next up, Willie Taveras hit a slow grounder to short, but he was able to beat out J-Roll's throw, keeping the game alive once again. Next up, Craig Biggio delivered a gut punch to the Phillies with a 3-run homer off Wagner, giving the Astros the lead. Lidge pitched a 1-2-3 ninth, and the Astros had swept the season series from the Phillies for the second straight year and kept their lead atop the wildcard standings. The Phillies were now in trouble, having lost 5 straight and were now 2.5 back. The Phillies had chances to win all 3 of those games, especially the last one, and had squandered a huge opportunity. While the Astros and Phillies had been playing each other, 2 other teams in the NL wildcard race, the Marlins and Nationals, were racing each other. After the Nationals defeated the Marlins in Game 1 of the series on Labor Day, the Marlins took the next 3 games in the series, and were just half a game back of the Astros entering their pivotal 3-game set against the Phillies. On Friday night, the Marlins led 4-2 in the third, but the Phillies tied it on a 2-run double from Pat Burrell. Starter AJ Burnett was pulled, and reliever Brian Mueller came in, and promptly gave up a 2-run homer to Ryan Howard, giving the Phillies the lead. They would go on to win 12-5, ending their 5-game losing streak, preventing the Marlins from gaining ground on the Astros. The Astros traveled to Milwaukee to take on the Brewers for 3. J.J. Hardy got the scoring started with a solo shot in the bottom of the first, giving the Brewers an early lead. After Jason Lane hit a homer to tie it in the top of the second, Damian Miller hit a 2-run shot off Roger Clemens in the bottom of the second to give the Brewers the lead right back. Jeff Bagwell came back off the DL that night and pinch hit for Clemens but struck out looking. The Brewers took Game 1 of the series by the score of 7-4, preventing the Astros from extending their lead over the Phillies or Marlins that night. On Saturday evening, with the Stros up 1-0 in the top of the second, Craig Biggio connected on a 2-out, 2-run double to give the Astros a 3-run lead. That was his 600th career regular season double. In the 8th, Lance Berkman added some insurance with a 2-run shot, and the Astros held on for a 7-5 victory, maintaining their place atop wildcard standings. That night in Philadelphia, tied at 4 in the 5th, Mike Lieberthal gave the Phils the lead with a 2-run homer, but in the next inning, the Marlins would come back. Down by 1 with the bases loaded and 2 down, Paul LaDuca connected with a 2-run single to give the Marlins the lead. In the bottom of the 8th, the Phillies had 2 on with 2 down. Todd Jones came in for the 4-out save and got Pat the Bat to ground out to third to end any sort of threat. In the 9th, Chase Utley reached third with 2 down, but Jones got Michael Tucker to ground out to second to secure the victory, and the Marlins were able to keep pace with the Astros, still just half a game back. On Sunday afternoon, the Phillies crushed the Marlins in the rubber match, scoring 6 runs in the second en route to an 11-1 victory. In Milwaukee, rookie Ricky Weeks hit a 2-run homer in the 4th, which proved to be the game winner as the Brewers played spoiler once again, taking the series with a 4-2 victory. With 3 weeks remaining in the regular season, the Astros still had a half-game lead over the Marlins and a 1.5-game lead over the Phillies. The top two would face off in a pivotal 4-game series in Houston starting Monday. The Phillies stayed home and welcomed the NL East leading Braves to town for 4 games. Rookie Yudai Brito was forced to make just his 3rd career start due to injuries from other starting pitchers. Scoreless in the 3rd, with the bases loaded and 2 down, Pat the Bat delivered the game's first runs with a 2-run single. Brito faced trouble in the 6th with 2 on and 1 out, but got Chipper Jones to ground into an inning-ending double play. The Phils took the series opener 4-1. Now, the question is, which team ahead of them would they gain ground on? That night in Houston, Carlos Delgado gave the Marlins an early lead with a 2-run shot in the 1st. With the Marlins up 4-1 in the 6th, starter D-Train crushed a 2-run homer to right, the 3rd home run of his career, and the Marlins took Game 1 of this series 8-2. It was a bad day for the Astros as the Marlins now led the wild card and the Phillies were just 1 game back. On Tuesday, already up 1-0 in the 2nd, Ryan Howard doubled the lead for the Phils with a solo shot, although the division-leading Braves showed their strength as Andrew Jones hit a bases-clearing double in the 5th as part of a 4-run inning and the Braves took the lead. But the Phils scored 2 in the bottom of the 5th to tie it, then regained the lead in the 6th on a Mike Lieberthal 2-out single. That score held up, and the Phillies had taken the first 2 against the Braves. How would the Marlins and Astros respond to the Phillies' victory? For the 2nd straight night, Carlos Delgado hit an early home run, this time a solo shot in the 2nd. Tied at 2 in the 7th, Paul Lo Duca gave the Marlins their 2-run lead back with a 2-run shot. Starter Josh Beckett ran into trouble in the 8th, allowing runners at the corners with 1 down, but Todd Jones came on in relief and got Lance Berkman to ground into an inning-ending double play. The Marlins won 4-2 to keep their lead atop the wildcard. The Astros had now lost 4 of their last 5, and were in the same position the Phillies were a couple nights prior, at 1.5 back. On Wednesday night, the Phillies crushed the Braves 12-4 thanks to a grand slam from Ramon Martinez in the 3rd inning. Now, it sounds weird to say this, but could the Phillies get some help from the Astros? Earlier in the day on Wednesday, Roger Clemens' mother passed away. Nevertheless, he still started that evening. He allowed back-to-back singles to start off the game, but settled down from there. He even drew a bases-loaded walk as part of a 3-run 2nd. He was pulled after 6 1/3 with 2 runners on. Chad Qualls came on and got Lo Duca to ground into an inning-ending double play. The Astros scored a bunch more runs late and won 10-2, ending their 3-game losing streak. After Wednesday's results, the Marlins and Phillies were now tied for the wild card, and the Astros were just half a game back. On Thursday, the Braves looked to avoid the 4-game sweep and not let the Phillies get any closer in the division. With 2 on and 2 outs in the 3rd, Chipper Jones hit a 3-run homer off Brett Myers to give the Braves an early lead. However, the Phillies would answer. In the 5th, Bobby Abreu hit his 24th home run of the season, a 2-run shot to cut the deficit to 1. That being said, the Braves would not let the Phillies come back, as Adam LaRoche hit a solo shot and Chipper hit his 2nd home run of the night, this time a 2-run homer. The Braves held on to win 6-4, avoiding the sweep, ensuring that the Phillies would not be leading the wild card by the end of the night, as the winner of the Marlins-Astros game would overtake them. Speaking of which, the Marlins loaded the bases with 1 out in the 2nd, but Andy Pettitte got Paul Lo Duca to ground into an inning-ending double play for the 2nd straight night, keeping the game scoreless. Brad Ausmus and Craig Biggio each hit solo shots in the 5th, and that would be enough as the Astros won 4-1, earning the series split and retaking first place in the wildcard standings. For the 2nd straight weekend, the Astros would face the Brewers, and the Phillies would face the Marlins, except the venues would be switched. On Friday night in South Florida, J-Roll was a triple shy of the cycle, contributing 4 RBIs as the Phils took Game 1 by a score of 13-3. In Houston, with the Astros needing to win to stay atop the wild card, Jeff Bagwell came up clutch with a pinch hit walk-off single in the bottom of the 9th. The Astros were still a half game up on the Phillies, while the Marlins and Nationals were still lurking around at a couple games back.
Fans that are here at Dolphin Stadium, they said all year long it would be a dogfight in this National League East, and it has been. Coming down to the final 2 weeks, both the Phillies and the Florida Marlins still in it behind the Atlanta Braves. But even more importantly, if you take a look at the wild card race in the National League, both these teams right in the heart of it, as 4 teams are separated by 2.5 games with 2 weeks to go. Hi everyone, Scott Graham along with Tommy Hutton. We've got a big ball game today.
Scoreless in the bottom of the third, with 2 on and 1 down. Chase Utley attempted to get a force out at second, but his throw was off target, loading the bases. Vicente Padilla then walked Carlos Delgado, scoring an unearned run. That would be the only run Padilla would allow that afternoon. On the other side, D-Train was outstanding. Through 8 innings of shutout baseball, he only allowed 3 singles and no Philly to reach second base. The Marlins extended their lead in the 8th off former Marlin Ugueth Urbina, when Juan Pierre scored on a Jeff Conine sac fly. D-Train came back out for the 9th, looking for the complete game victory, and to close the gap with the Astros. He gave up a leadoff single to J-Roll, then walked Jason Michaels, the first walk he had issued all game. Jack McKeon let him stay in to face Bobby Abreu.
Third base now with that bunt attempt. And that one is hit hard, and over the glove of Castillo in the right field. Jimmy Rollins is going to score. Jason Michaels around at third. And the Phillies are on the board with the tying run 90 feet away.
Castillo had been playing in due to Abreu showing a bunt attempt earlier in the at-bat. Fortunately for him, that would not turn out to be the worst defensive play of his career. McKeon pulled D-Train for closer Todd Jones to hold the lead, or at least limit the damage.
Chavez would be able to have a little bit more speed around the bases. Pat Burrell skies one in the air into shallow center field. Michael's going to set himself. Pierre coming on, lets it fall. And now he'll pick it up. And everybody is safe. A little pop-up to shallow center field. And Juan Pierre can't make the play as the Phillies tie up this ball game. Chase Utley 0 for 3, all of it facing Willis today, but now he's got Todd Jones with first and second and nobody out. And he's showing bunt. There's team baseball right there. The sacrifice is thrown away. And the Phillies are going to take the lead. On another defensive misplay by the Marlins, 3 of them in a row here in the 9th inning. It's all gotten away that quickly from Florida. And Bell pops one up. That's the same spot. Shallow center field. And they can't make the play again. This is amazing. The Phillies score their 4th run as Victorino crosses the plate. It has all gone bad defensively for Florida here in this 9th inning. Still nobody out. And Lieberthal wraps one into center field. That's going to be a base hit. And it'll bring in the 5th run of this 9th inning for the Phillies. Chase Utley scores the RBI single for Lieberthal. It's now 5-2 Phils. Wraps one on the grounds and right through the 5-hole on Conine. This is just not ending for the Florida Marlins. Another run scores and the Phillies now with a 4-run lead. Still nobody out. Infield drawn in for Rollins, who started this off with a single to extend his hitting streak to 23 games. And he punches one through the drawn-in infield. 1 run scores, and the 2nd run will cross. It is now an 8-run 9th inning for the Phillies. And there's a line drive into center field for a base hit. And they're going to wave the runner. The throw to the infield is way up the line. Ryan Howard scores the Phillies' 9th run, and Jimmy Rollins will take 3rd on the RBI single for Chavez. Unbelievable. Shane Victorino lifts one in the air to center field. Guess what? That likely will be another run. Pierre had to battle that all the way looking into the sun, and Rollins will score easily. We had talked about in the last 4 games the Phillies have been averaging 10 runs a game against the Marlins. What we didn't realize is they would get 10 in 1 inning.
I don't even want to think about how many runs were unearned that inning. A terrible loss for the Marlins, but an important win for the Phillies, who are now momentarily tied with the Astros for the wild card. Perhaps that 9th inning was divine justice for the way they lost to the Astros last week. Later in the day in Houston, Craig Biggio led off the first with a home run, his 22nd of the year. That would be enough, as Brandon Backey pitched 7 scoreless innings, and the Astros blanked the Brewers 7-0, keeping their half-game lead over the Phillies. On Sunday afternoon, the Astros again struck first in the bottom of the first as Lance Berkman hit a 2-run double off Chris Capuano. Even Eric Bruntlett hit a home run, his 4th of the season. Wandy Rodriguez and 3 relievers limited the Brewers to just 1 run on 5 hits, and the Astros completed the sweep, ensuring they would have the wildcard lead by the end of the day. On Sunday Night Baseball, the Marlins were able to get back to the Phillies, avoiding the 3-game sweep, winning 14-6. With 2 weeks to go in the regular season, the Astros, winners of their last 5, now had a 1.5-game lead over the Phils. The Marlins were still alive at 2.5 back, but would need to make up some ground quick. The Astros traveled to Pittsburgh to take on the last-place Pirates for 4 beginning Monday night. Roger Clemens allowed 6 runs, 4 earned, over 5 2/3, and rookie Ian Snell pitched 8 scoreless innings, earning his first career win, as the Buccos blanked the Astros 7-0, helping out their in-state rival. All other teams in the wildcard race had a day off, and thus each gained half a game on the Stros. The next night, tied at 2 in the 4th, Brad Ausmus hit a go-ahead 2-run double to give the Astros a lead they would not relinquish, and they won 7-4. The Phillies began a 3-game set in Atlanta, where the Braves held a 5-game lead in the division with 12 games to go. That night, with the Braves up 1-0 in the 6th, the Phillies loaded the bases with 1 out, but Jorge Sosa struck out Pat Burrell looking, thanks to a classic Atlanta Braves strike zone. Sosa would get out of the inning unscathed. In the bottom of the inning, Chipper was walked with the bases loaded, extending the Braves' lead. In the 9th, up by 3 with 2 down, Kyle Farnsworth struck out Jason Michaels, representing the tying run. The Braves were now closer to a 14th consecutive division title. The night couldn't have gone any better for the Astros, as they won, and the 3 teams chasing them all lost. On Wednesday night, the Astros scored 4 runs in the first and second inning, capitalizing off 3 Pirates errors en route to a 12-8 victory. Could the Phillies keep pace this time? Tied at 3 in the 6th, J-Roll hit a 2-out 2-run double to give the Phillies the lead. After adding another in the 7th, Adam LaRoche tied the game with a 3-run shot off Ryan Madsen to tie the game at 6. That score held into the 10th when Ryan Howard came up with 1 out and the bases loaded.
Oh, he hits this one a long way. Back it goes to left field. Back, gone! The grand slam!
The Phillies were able to keep pace with the Astros. On Thursday afternoon, the Astros scored a couple runs early, and that was all they needed, as Brandon Backey pitched 7 innings, allowing only 1 run, and the Stros took the series finale by the score of 2-1. Also that afternoon, the Phillies and Braves wrapped up their series. In a pitcher's duel between John Lieber and Tim Hudson, the game remained scoreless into the 8th. In the bottom of the inning, the Braves had a runner at third and 1 out, but Bobby Cox decided to let starter Tim Hudson hit. He hit a little squibbler in front of the plate and was thrown out, unable to score the run. The next man up, Rafael Furcal, hit a sharp grounder to the left side, where David Bell made a diving stop and threw out Furcal to end the inning, keeping the game scoreless. He may have atoned for his error against the Astros a couple weeks ago. In the top of the 9th, with Hudson still on the mound, Michael Tucker broke the deadlock with an RBI single against the shift. Next up, Shane Victorino broke the game open with a 3-run homer to right field, the first home run of his career. With just 9 games remaining, the Astros held their 2-game lead over the Phillies for the wild card. The Marlins were still alive at 4 back, but were running out of time after losing 2 of 3 to the Mets. The Astros traveled to Wrigley to take on the Cubs for 3. On Friday afternoon, the Cubs knocked around Astros starter Wandy Rodriguez, who allowed 5 runs in only 4 innings, although the Astros would come back, scoring 3 times in the 5th to make it a 1-run game. In the 8th, they loaded the bases with 1 out, but Jose Vizcaíno grounded into fielder's choice at home for out number 2, then Willie Taveras struck out to end the inning, and the Cubs held on 5-4. Could the Phillies take advantage? That night, they began a 3-game series in the Queen City. They looked to be on their way to closing the gap to just 1 game after Ryan Howard hit a 2-run shot in the 5th to give the Phillies a 6-1 lead. However, the Reds scored 4 in the 5th, then 1 in the 6th to tie it, then 2 more in the 6th on this Jason LaRue 2-run homer. In the 7th, Austin Kearns hit a home run. Then the next man up, Ray Olmedo, hit a home run, and the Reds had scored 9 unanswered to take a 10-6 lead. In the 9th inning, the first 2 men reached for the Phillies. Then Chase Utley hit a 3-run homer to make it a 1-run game. A few batters later, with the Phils down to their final strike,
Swing and a drive left field, deep, and that one is gone. David Bell with a 2-run homer. How about the Philadelphia Phillies?
technically that doesn't count as a blown save for David Weathers since it wasn't a save attempt up by 4 runs. Anyways, the Phillies had narrowed the deficit to just 1 game, with only 8 games remaining. On Saturday afternoon, Craig Biggio and Lance Berkman each hit solo shots off Carlos Zambrano in the first inning, giving the Astros an early lead. Up by 1 in the 7th, Morgan Ensberg hit a fly ball to deep center field, but Corey Patterson lost his footing in the wet conditions, allowing Ensberg to reach on an RBI triple. The Astros would pull away with an 8-3 victory. Could the Phillies keep pace? Later that night, Adam Dunn hit his 38th home run of the year, a 2-run shot in third, and that would be enough as the Reds won 3-2, as David Weathers pitched a 1-2-3 ninth this time. The Phillies' loss ensured that the Astros would have the wildcard lead by the end of the weekend, as they were back to 2 games up. On Sunday afternoon, J-Roll got the party started with a leadoff home run, extending his hit streak to 30 games. In the 5th, Chase Utley lifted a fly ball to deep left center field beyond the reach of Ryan Friel, who then inadvertently kicked it into left field, and Utley ran hard around the bases and made it all the way for an inside-the-park home run. Fill thine horn with oil, I guess. The Reds threatened in the 7th with runners on the corners and nobody out, but starter Corey Lytle got Edwin Encarnacion, yes, that Edwin Encarnacion, to ground into a double play, limiting the damage to just a run. The Phillies won 6-3. Now could they get some help from the Cubbies? Later that afternoon at Wrigley, Derek Lee hit a solo shot off Andy Pettitte in the 1st, his 45th home run of the year. In the 4th, the Astros had runners at 2nd and 3rd with 2 down, but Jason Lane was picked off at 3rd base to end the inning. The Astros took the lead in the 7th and brought in Mike Gallo to close the door in the bottom of the 7th, but Jeremy Burnitz hit a 2-out, 2-run home run to give the Cubs the lead back. Ryan Dempster got the save in the 9th, and the Cubs had played spoiler, taking 2 of 3 from the Astros. Their wildcard lead was back down to 1 game with just 1 week remaining in the regular season. Meanwhile, the Marlins were swept by the Braves and their playoff hopes were approaching 0. The Phillies returned home from their 9-game road trip to take on the Mets, who still had barely a sliver of hope of winning the wildcard. The series opener on Monday night started 2.5 hours late due to rain. On the very first pitch of the bottom of the 1st, J-Roll hit a leadoff home run to extend his hit streak to 31 and to give the Phils an early lead. Later in the game, with the Phillies up 4-2 in the 7th, Pat Burrell extended the lead with his 31st home run of the year. In the 8th, Ugueth Urbina relieved starter Brett Myers. He allowed a double, a walk, then an RBI double to Miguel Cairo, and it was just a 2-run game with nobody out. Next up, Carlos Beltran hit a grounder to second that Chase Utley bobbled, then threw away, allowing both runners to score to tie the game. Urbina was pulled, and a few batters later, with the bases loaded and one out, Mike Jacobs lifted a fly ball to deep center field that was caught by Kenny Lofton but deep enough to score the go-ahead run from third. The Phillies had 2 on with 2 out in the bottom of the 9th, but Roberto Hernandez got Pat Burrell to hit a check swing grounder back to him, and the Mets had played spoiler, keeping their very slim playoff hopes alive. It was a huge missed opportunity for the Phillies to gain ground on the Astros, who had the night off. On Tuesday night, with the Mets already up 1-0 in the 3rd, Marlon Anderson ripped a single to right, scoring Jose Reyes, giving the Mets a 2-0 lead. Anderson would score later in the inning on a Beltran RBI double. The Phillies scored a couple in the 5th, making it a 1-run game, and had 2 on with 2 out in the 7th, but Pat Burrell struck out on a full count to end the inning. In the 8th, with 2 down, Victorino lifted a single to shallow center field. David Bell, who was on first, rounded second, headed for third, but was gunned down by Carlos Beltran to end the inning. That was the 2nd time this month that Bell was thrown out on the bases to end the 8th inning. In the 9th, Chase Utley reached second with 2 down, but Aaron Heilman struck out Bobby Abreu to end the ballgame, and it was yet another missed opportunity for the Phillies. They had picked the wrong time to lose 2 games to a non-playoff team. Meanwhile, the Astros began a quick 2-game series in St. Louis that night against the Cardinals, who had already clinched the #1 seed in the National League. The game was scoreless into the 6th until Jason Lane hit a 2-out 2-run home run off Matt Morris, Lane's 25th of the season. In the 8th, up 2-1, Craig Biggio belted a solo shot, his 25th home run of the season as well. The Astros won by that 3-1 score and now had a 2.5-game lead with not much time remaining. This was the Astros' largest wildcard lead all season. The Mets and Marlins were now eliminated, so it would officially be a 2-horse race the rest of the way. On Wednesday, the Phillies looked to avoid the sweep and keep their playoff hopes from fading altogether. Trailing 2-1 in the 3rd, Chase Utley unloaded with a 3-run homer to right off Steve Traxel. In the 5th, Ryan Howard led off the inning with a triple, one of only 21 he would hit in his career. The Phillies poured out their frustration by winning 16-6. Now, could they get some help from the Cardinals? Through the first 4 innings, it looked that way as the Cardinals led 2-1. With 2 outs in the 5th, though, Morgan Ensberg reached on a single to left that Reggie Sanders may have been playing a little too deep on. Next up, Lance Berkman hit a 2-run homer to right, his 22nd of the season, giving the Astros the lead. Next up, Mike Lamb hit a home run to nearly the exact same spot to double the Astros' lead. However, the Cardinals tied it back up in the bottom of the inning, then Reggie Sanders gave them the lead back with a 2-run shot, his 2nd homer of the night. However, the Astros scored 2 in the 6th to tie it right back, and that score held into the 9th. Willie Taveras led off with an infield single, bringing up Morgan Ensberg.
2-1 pitch.
Line down the left side. It's going to kick way down into the corner. Willie T is headed for 3rd. They're going to wave him. Here comes the relay. Watch it at the plate. Save!
Brad Lidge pitched a 1-2-3 ninth, picking up his 40th save of the season, and the Astros pulled out a gutsy win to keep their 2.5-game lead over the Phillies. They would return home after their 6-3 road trip to conclude the regular season by facing the Cubs for 4 games. On Thursday, they had the opportunity to put a stranglehold on the wild card. The Cubs, still bitter about their collapse from the previous year, looked to spoil the party. Tied at 1 in the 6th, Derek Lee hit his 46th home run of the year to give the Cubs the lead. In the 7th, Michael Barrett grounded into what should have been a double play, but shortstop Adam Everett threw the ball into right field, allowing the runners to reach 2nd and 3rd with nobody out. With Corey Patterson up, starter Wandy Rodriguez threw a wild pitch, allowing Jeremy Burnitz to come home and score, giving the Cubs a 2-run lead. Down 3-2 in the 9th, with 2 down and a runner at first, Luke Scott hit a base hit up the middle. Pinch hitter Charles Gibson ran hard around 2nd, headed for 3rd, and he tried to catch the Cubs sleeping by heading home, but the Cubs infield was alert and threw him out at the plate to end the ballgame. It was an uncharacteristic loss for the Astros, so many mistakes against a sub-500 team. The Cubs had helped out the Phillies, who were hanging on at 2 games back with 3 to play. The Phillies concluded their regular season with a 3-game series at RFK to take on the Nationals. In their first season in DC, the Nationals defied expectations, starting the season 50-31 and a 5.5-game lead in the NL East, thanks in part to a 10-game winning streak in early June. However, they fell back down to earth the rest of the summer. They lost 18 of their next 23 games, falling out of a playoff position by the end of the month. While they stayed just a few games back of the Astros and Phillies throughout August and early September, they couldn't win when it mattered the most. All-star closer Chad Cordero entered the final month with an ERA under 1, but it nearly doubled in September as he allowed 8 earned runs in only 7 innings pitched. That's an ERA over 10. This included 3 blown saves. On Friday night, down 1-0 in the 2nd, Ryan Howard tied the game with a solo shot off Livan Hernandez. That was his 21st homer of the year, leading all rookies. In the 3rd, Chase Utley drove in J-Roll with a single to give the Phils the lead. In the 6th, with the Phillies up 3-2, Kenny Lofton delivered an RBI single, scoring Mike Lieberthal to extend the lead. The Nationals loaded the bases with 2 down in the 7th. Chasing starter Corey Lytle and Jamie Carroll hit a sharp grounder up the middle, but Chase Utley made a nice stop to keep the Nats off the board that inning. The Nationals would not give up though. Still down 2 in the bottom of the 9th, Marlon Byrd hit a 1-out double off Billy Wagner. Next up, Brad Wilkerson was hit on the hands by a Wagner fastball, putting the tying run on base with just one out. After a double steal and an RBI groundout, Wagner got the save by catching Nick Johnson's pop-out, with the tying run just 90 feet away. This guaranteed that the Phillies would not be eliminated tonight. Now could they get some help from the Cubbies again? That night in Houston, it was a pitcher's duel between Andy Pettitte and Carlos Zambrano. Each went 7 innings, allowing only 1 run. The Cubs took the lead in the 8th, until Lance Berkman hit a fly ball to left field that would have been an out in all other parks except Fenway. Okay, sorry, I need to interrupt here. I hate Minute Maid Park's dimensions. I'm so tired of seeing simple line drives over the years, either to right or to left field, that result in home runs. But there's a wall in left field, you say. Yeah, it's only 17 feet high. That's less than half the height of the Green Monster. Oracle Park's wall in right field is 24 feet high, and there's wind coming in from the bay. At least Fenway Park has the excuse of being in a cramped space. This park has no excuse. For a time, Tal's Hill made up for its inexplicably short dimensions, but no, they had to get rid of the only good thing about this ballpark. And no, don't tell me that the train is cool when your city only sees intercity passenger train service 3 days per week in each direction. Back to the game. The Astros are 75-0 this year when leading after 8 innings, and Brad Lidge has 40 saves, and wait a second, this isn't supposed to be happening. The Astros were supposed to comfortably make the playoffs, not leave it till the final day like last year. The Astros aren't supposed to lose games when leading after 8. Brad Lidge isn't supposed to blow save opportunities. Who messed up the script? Down by 1 in the 9th, the Astros had the tying run at third with 2 down, but Ryan Dempster got Orlando Palmeiro to fly out to end the ballgame. The Astros looked to be a shoo-in for the playoffs just 48 hours ago. Now, their lead is back down to 1 game with only 2 games to go. As the calendar turns to October, the Phillies are still very much alive. On Saturday, the Phillies and Astros played concurrently at 4 p.m. Eastern on Fox. In DC, J-Roll led off the game with a double on the very first pitch, extending his hitting streak to 35 games. He later scored on a Kenny Lofton single. Later in the inning, with the bases loaded and 1 out, Ryan Howard cleared the bases with a 3-run double, and the Phillies were off to a fast start. Meanwhile, in Houston,
Brought to you by Taco Bell. In the air, left field, and Biggio makes it 1-0. His career-high 26th home run of the season. 44th leadoff homer of his career.
it was a nice pitcher's duel between Roger Clemens and Jerome Williams. The Cubs tied it on a sac fly in the 4th. Back to the nation's capital. The Nats scored a couple to make it close, but in the 5th, Chase Utley hit a 2-run homer to give the Phillies a 4-run lead once again. Back to Houston in the 6th, the Astros got runners at the corners with 2 down, and Jason Lane came up to the plate.
Came with a fastball and a base hit into left field has given Houston the lead.
He delivered another clutch hit to give the Astros the lead once again. In the next inning, Corey Patterson was on second with 2 down, and Nefi Perez came up looking to tie the game.
He is loose. Off the glove of Clemens, but he knocks it down and gets the out. Clemens, 7 innings of 1-run baseball. His team 6 outs away from clinching at least a tie in the National League wild card.
The Astros scored another in the 7th on a grounder to third that Nomar decided not to throw home on. Brad Lidge pitched a 1-2-3 ninth, and the Astros reduced their magic number to just 1. Back to DC, Ryan Howard crushed a leadoff homer in the 7th, and the Phillies won 8-4, keeping their playoff hopes alive. While the Phillies did get a couple of 9th-inning comebacks in September against the Marlins and Reds, it's hard to ignore their late-blown leads against the Astros and Mets. The former stings the most, since it was against the team they're trying to catch in the wildcard race. In fact, as mentioned earlier in the episode, the Phillies went 0-6 against the Astros this year, just as they did the year before as well. How different would things be if they had won just one game against the Astros in 2005? In the last 12 seasons, this was the latest that the Phillies had still been mathematically alive for a playoff spot. The Astros were not new to this, having clinched the wild card on the final day of the season the year before, and having made the playoffs 5 of the previous 8 seasons. They were also vying to become the first team to make the playoffs after being 15 games under 500 at one point in the season since the 1914 Boston Braves. The Phillies game started an hour before the Astros on Sunday, meaning the Astros in all likelihood would know what they would have to do before their game was over. The Phillies needed to win, the Astros to lose, and win a planned game in Philadelphia on Monday to qualify for the playoffs. The Astros just needed a win or a Phillies loss. On Sunday, the Phils and Nats were scoreless into the 4th until J-Roll led off with a single, extending his hitting streak to 36. He scored a few batters later on a sac fly to give the Phillies a 1-0 lead. Down in Houston, it was a classic pitching matchup between Greg Maddux and Roy Oswalt. After Oswalt pitched a 1-2-3 first, Biggio led off the bottom half of the inning with a double. He scored a couple batters later on a Morgan Ensberg single. A couple batters after that, Mike Lamb singled home Ensberg to put the Astros up 2-0 early. In the 4th, the Astros had runners on 2nd and 3rd with 2 down, and Maddux looked like he would escape the jam because starting pitcher Roy Oswalt came to the plate.
Grounder in the hole, maybe Perez backhands, off balance throw to first, safe and run scores. RBI infield single for Roy Oswalt, his 13th hit of the year, gives him his 2nd RBI, and it's 3-0 Houston.
Roy has just done something that I never did in my entire 13-year career.
What's that, get an infield hit?
Beat out an infield hit.
Back to DC, the Phillies scored 4 in the 5th, but did you think the Nats were just going to roll over? Ryan Church hit a 3-run bomb in the 6th to cut the Phillies' lead to 2. Back to Houston, the Cubs wanted to join in on playing spoiler, and Michael Barrett hit a homer to lead off the 4th, cutting the Astros' lead to 2. Later in the inning, Corey Patterson doubled home Matt Burton, and it was a 1-run game. In the 6th, Oswalt allowed back-to-back singles with no one out to Nomar and Burnitz. Then Barrett delivered it again with an RBI single, tying the game at 3. Is this really happening? I thought the Astros were supposed to take care of business on the final day of the season, just like last year. A couple batters later, recurring character Nefi Perez lifted a single to right field, scoring Burnitz, and just like that, the Cubs had the lead. All of a sudden, the Astros are in a precarious position. If results hold, they're playing a game in Philadelphia tomorrow night. Greg Maddux isn't known for blowing leads either.
After bouncing into a forced play in the 1st, Brad Ausmus on deck. And here comes one high, and they are getting ready for a tying run. Home run, Jason Lane, number 28. It's a tie ball game.
It didn't take long.
Number 26 for Lane.
Just what the doctor ordered for the Astros, another clutch hit from Lane. Could the momentum be turning back to their side?
Magwell grounds in a hole at shortstop. Maybe Perez to second. He throws it into right field. Everett sprints for third base, and Doug Mansolino's going to send him home. He's going to score. And the Astros grab a 5-4 lead with Bagwell moving into third.
What a costly error that was for the Cubs, and a huge break for the Astros.
Works has had a very good year. In the dirt, it gets away. Gibson will score, and the Astros lead by 2. It's 6-4 on a wild pitch by Wirtz.
It was a tough way for Maddux to finish the season, especially when trying to spoil a team's playoff chances. Chad Qualls pitched a 1-2-3 7th, and Dan Wheeler pitched a 1-2-3 8th. In Washington, the Phillies scored 4 in the 9th and won 9-3. They did all they could do. Now they just had to hope for a Cubs comeback. Brad Lidge entered in the 9th, in almost the exact same position as the year before, with a 2-run lead and just needing 3 outs to send the Astros back to the playoffs. However, Matt Merton had other ideas and led off the inning with a single. Lidge struck out pinch hitter Ben Grieve, then had to face pinch hitter Todd Green, knowing a ground ball could end the ballgame.
Backhanded Everett throws to Brunner. He dropped the ball, and the the call is safe. The umpire at first seemed to be calling out Ed Rapalano, and then he changed his call to safe, which appeared to be the proper call. And now the Cubs have runners at first and second with one out.
Well, I don't think that was supposed to happen either. The Phillies now have an extra life, and it's up to the Cubs to take advantage of it.
Slowly, Everett comes after this one. Goes to first.
Wow. You kind of wonder about that, too.
The ball wasn't hit very hard.
It wasn't hit very hard, but boy, if you can get a force play at second, then the tying run is not in scoring position.
Adam Everett decided to get the easy out at first, rather than the forced second. This put the tying run in scoring position with 2 down, and Jose Macias represented the last chance for the Phillies.
Line shot, and it's caught by Rutland. The Astros clinch the wild card. The second straight year they make an improbable run to the playoffs. They were 15 and 30 in May. They wind up 89 and 73. The 6th time they make the playoffs in the last 9 years. Their bags were packed. They had to be ready to go to Philadelphia. Now they stay here for a little while before heading for Atlanta. And they are the wild card champions for the 2nd consecutive year. What a comeback for this team.
Just incredible.